Hello, and welcome to another Thursday interview with me, Anne Diamond, here in Britain. And this week we are celebrating all things French. And my guest this week is a fan of passion. And the fact that I am now wearing this hat should probably suggest to you that he is a French master chef. But frankly, not any master chef. Many say he is the best in the world. I'll take my hat off to him now, with the nod, of course, to Disney's amazing star of the movie Ratatouille, one of my favourites. But it is worth acknowledging that my guest started his life not from a world of privilege or even culinary legacy, but he started from a much more humble background. He blossomed from a difficult childhood. He was sent away to boarding school, and he describes food and cooking as being a source of comfort to him. An eccentric local chef took him under his wing when he was just 11, and he began to realise that cooking could become a career, not just a hobby. And we'll ask him how that happened. Since those days, he has become world renowned, celebrated in many countries, and particularly, of course, in America and New York, and has starred in so many TV programs and cookery shows and reality shows and documentaries you would lose count. But he never loses perspective on what he calls, quite simply, good food. And I'm told, reassuringly, that he is one of the most calm and cool people on the planet. He brings to his celebration of food an ambience of peace and well-being. And indeed, with his global success, he could open, 100,000 successful restaurants right throughout the world. But he doesn't want to. He thinks just 2 is enough. An intriguing personality, don't you think? So let's have a look at the trailer for one of his latest TV shows, Avec Eric.
This is special.
On Avec Eric, we go right to the source. It is important for me to get out into the world, to experience nature, to work with my hands, to speak to farmers, fishermen, cooks, and producers. But these journeys are so much more. I don't totally understand how the light from the sky turns into something beautiful on the plate. But when we cook for someone, we are sharing a little bit of our soul. And when we eat, we begin with our eyes. The food must look beautiful on the plate. Food is my art. It's my way of connecting to people and giving them a taste of how inspirational and beautiful the world can be. Look at your food, think about it. Not too much, it's not an intellectual exercise, but it's a sensual experience. But look at the food and appreciate more.
So, as you can see, my guest in this France week on Viking.TV is MasterChef par excellence, Eric Ripert, who joins us now from his office in New York. Hello there and welcome.
Hi, Anne. It's good to be with you today.
Oh,
Thank you so much for the introduction.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm very honoured to meet you, and everybody is. I mean, that video alone has got everybody's mouths watering. Tell us where you are at the moment. There are lots of cookery books behind you. Are you in the restaurant or are you at home?
So I am under the dining room. We have all the offices, and this is our library and conference room, and that's where I am right now.
That is the restaurant Le Bernardin.
That's Le Bernardin, and it's in Midtown in New York City, yes.
And I presume it's had to be closed for quite a long time.
Yes, we have been closed for quite a long time, but the good news is that we are reopening on March 17th.
My goodness, that must be wonderful news for you, because how frustrating must it have been over the last year nearly to have to be closed, to have to turn clients away, to not be able to do what you do for them.
Yes, and also it has been very sad and challenging for our team. We used to have 180 employees, and a lot of them have been unemployed for a year now. So it's time to reopen. It's time to have the team back together and to take care of our clients and friends.
Yes, you must be looking forward to. Has it been a very hard year? I mean, it's been hard for so many people, and we have to remember that people have lost their lives as well as their livelihoods.
Yes.
How difficult has it been for you and all of your staff?
Well, in terms of illnesses, in our team, nobody got sick, and that's the good news.
Yes.
Now we are getting vaccinated. I got my second Moderna vaccine, so it's a good news too. And many of our employees have access to it. The process is going fast now. So
Yeah.
I'm very hopeful and optimistic about having all the team vaccinated and keeping the same protocol that we had when we were open for a little bit, with gloves and masks. And we have special equipments in our ventilation system to basically kill the virus in the air, in a dining room, in a kitchen, in offices.
Yes, isn't it interesting that there have been, it sounds crazy to say it, but there are some benefits to what we've all had to learn about air filtration systems, and maybe just being a little bit more disciplined about masks and gloves. And I know in the restaurant industry, you've always had to be, but we've all had to think again. And maybe that is a good thing.
Well, yes, of course, it's always, even during difficult times, it's always some positive coming out of it. Yes, some people suffer tremendously, and some of the people were sick, and some of the people passed away, and whoever has been going through the process has been suffering psychologically or economically or both. But ultimately, it has some beneficial effects.
I've read a lot about you in the last week or so, and you say that every morning you wake up thankful to be alive, and that you have the opportunity to do something good that day. And when you go home at night, you ask yourself, did I work well today? And can I do it better tomorrow? That's a very strong belief system.
Well, I don't know if it's a strong belief system. It's my way of living. It's the way I wake up in the morning and I'm saying to myself, today, do not harm people, do not hurt people, do the right things, and so on. And then when I come back at night after a day of work or not, I look at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, did I really do what I was supposed to do, or what I told myself? And it's always a bit of difference in between the goal and the wish and the end result. But that makes my journey interesting.
What do you do if you look in the mirror in the evening and say, did I do well today? And you answer yourself no. Do you make a resolution to do better tomorrow?
Oh, yes, of course. I make a resolution, and I make sure I acknowledge it. At the same time, I do not, it's not about feeling good or bad. It's about saying, okay, today you didn't succeed, and you know that, and therefore tomorrow you will do better. And feel good about yourself. Because I think if you don't feel good about yourself, then it's very hard to love people around you if you don't know how to love yourself.
Now, you see, this is very interesting because you come from a world, a master chef in a big kitchen with an enormous integrity to protect and a reputation to protect. And a lot of chefs in that position are very bad-tempered, are prima donnas, and people dread them. They run their kitchens, so fast and furious that it's a brutal, terrifying place to exist. And yet you do not have that reputation. People say you are calm and collected. So how do you do that?
Well, when I was a young chef, I was a very abusive chef in terms of screaming at the cooks, throwing plates on the floor when the food was not good, having tantrum, and so on. And I realized that one day I sat down and I was home at the end of the day, and I was miserable. And I said, my life is miserable. Why so? And I started to think, and I said, I am an angry person. I am an angry individual who happens to be a chef. And this has to change because the people around me are not happy. I'm not happy. And even if you are just selfish and you think about being productive right in your kitchen, a cook who's shaking like this is not going to do a better job than a cook who's happy, excited, and precise in his job. So that day for me was an awakening in a sense. And I decided, and it was a work in progress, I decided that I would be kind to myself, kind to others, and I will apply that also in the kitchen where I spend most of my time. And realizing that anger is not a quality, anger is a weakness, I think is very important.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's a breakthrough. Hopefully it will happen with other chefs. Tell me about Le Bernardin, the restaurant. We've got a couple of pictures of it. If I lived in New York, I would know it very well, I know. Tell me about it and what you have managed to build there, and how do you keep that standard of excellence over the years?
Le Bernardin opened in New York in 1986, and I joined the team in 1991 as the chef de cuisine. The owners were Maggie Lecause and Gilbert Lecause, sister and brothers. And he passed away in 1994, and then I became her business partner in 1995. And since then, I am the chef and co-owner of Le Bernardin. The secret is really to be humble, to work hard, to be curious, to think about the team, to think about ultimately the clients, what the motivation is. It's basically searching for perfection in every aspect of what we do at Le Bernardin to create an experience that is very unique and at the same time that has a sense of place. Le Bernardin is in New York City. You should feel that you are in New York City. And I think when we think like that, it makes us basically be motivated and ultimately relevant in what we are doing.
It sounds wonderful, and clearly your clientele apart from the last year, are you taking bookings already?
Oh yes, of course. We are very happy that the week of March 17, and which is St. Patrick, by the way.
Yes, it is.
We are already full, but unfortunately, full means 30% capacity of the dining room because we still have some restrictions.
Yes, that's going to make it quite hard for a lot of businesses, but I guess things will get better, won't they?
Yes, I'm an eternal optimistic.
Yeah, me too. I think we've all had to learn to be, haven't we? Tell me, I was telling you earlier that I love your book. I mean, you have written other books about cookery, particularly about how to cook wonderful meals. But this book, 32 Yolks, is a memoir, and I wasn't expecting it. It's a story of how you became who you are from childhood, and it wasn't an easy childhood. Tell us the story very briefly, if you can. How you became a chef, because you didn't come from a cooking family particularly, did you?
No, not at all. So I was born in Antibes in the French Riviera. My father was in the banking industry. My mother was in the fashion industry, and everything was fine until when I became 5 years old. Then they divorced, and from that day, things got complicated and challenging. However, of course, as a young child, you survive those experiences because it's no choice, but you learn a lot from it. At age 10 or 11, I was very attracted to the kitchen because I loved eating good food from my grandma and aunts and my mother, actually, who was a great cook. But he was a chef who was a bit eccentric, and I was visiting him every day. And instead of studying in school, I was in his kitchen every day. And therefore, when I was 15 years old, I ended up in the principal office. And for me, was the end of the studies in a regular program. I went to culinary school, graduated with honors actually at 17 years old, moved to Paris by myself and worked in La Tour d'Argent, who was still very famous, and then worked with Joël Robuchon, who is a legend, and came to America in 1989, Le Bernardin in 1991. But Le Bernardin is not part of the book because the memoir stops at the airport when I'm entering the gate of the plane to come to America.
Well, yes, because most people, by the time they buy this book and read it, they know who you are, but they don't necessarily know where you came from or what you came from. I mean, I must say, I'm the mother of 5 sons. And so as a mother of sons, I feel so strongly about what you went through. But if the very beginning of the book, you say 2 things happened the year I turned 11. My father died and I became friends with my first professional chef, a guy named Jacques. My mother, distressed at my sadness over the loss of my father, tried to cure it with the one thing she knew I still loved, an extraordinary meal. And so you mix this story of a very sad little boy, actually, and an angry little boy too. And the one thing that pulled you through was cooking and food.
Yes, and also it was an expression of showing love and compassion from my mother. She is not necessarily a very emotional person when you meet her, but her way of expressing her love it's to cook, and all the love goes into the process, and therefore she knew that I love food, and and we have many experience at home, and that was her way of showing her son that she was supporting him, and she was again loving him so much.
Yes, sometimes it's the only way a mother can. When you can't talk, sometimes you cook a meal and eat and just be together over food. Sometimes it's the only way you can communicate. So there you were. I mean, you say there, you went off to Paris on your own. You were very brave, but clearly by that time, dedicated to what was become a career.
I think I was very naive, which is good because I didn't think so much. I mean, when you gain experience and you get older, suddenly you realize that you have done things in your youth that you wouldn't do anymore. And I'm not sure I will just jump in a plane and end up in a foreign country with a suitcase and start today. I don't know. Maybe I would. It depends. I don't know.
Well, they say Paris is a very different country from the rest of France. So actually, you probably did already.
It's a very difficult city to live in. It's a very, very tough city, especially when you come from the south of France. It's a different culture, and Parisians are living in a very stressful environment, and it's definitely a very cultural shock when you're a young kid and you end up with your suitcase in a subway, and you are going to one of the best restaurants in the world at the time, and you just have your experience from culinary school.
But you are also working, I mean, yes, one of the best restaurants, but one of the toughest kitchens. Was it very hard at first?
Yes, it was very hard. It was because the culture at the time, and I don't know today how it is in Europe or in France, but at the time, they were teaching you excellency by humiliating you. The idea was, we're going to break you, we're going to rebuild you and make you a champion, basically. So on purpose, you were humiliated physically by being punched in the shoulders or being kicked in the butt, or you were insulted all day long, and you had to do some work that was very humiliating as well, and so on. And I have to say, I mean, of course, it makes you tough, and it makes you, it maybe accelerates the process in making you potentially a champion. But I'm not a fan of that education, because I believe you lose a lot of talent in the process, and it's not necessarily needed. In my kitchen, is definitely the opposite of that.
Yeah, that's good, because it's a bit old-fashioned, that attitude now. I can understand it might have worked for some. We played the video earlier of your promotional work for Avec Eric. I want to have a look at it again, and you talk us through what it is, because it just looks wonderful. You traveled all over the world. You've tasted and tested all sorts of amazing foods. What a tremendous, exciting journey it's been, but also a privilege, I guess. So if we look at that now, just tell us what we're looking at. We can see you looking around.
So I see myself talking now I mean, now I am on the boat, but this is in Australia. And I spent 3 weeks shooting in Australia. And we have some scenes from Australia that are mixed with others from Korea in that TV series. That was the third season of Avec Eric. We also shot in Puerto Rico during that season, which is in the Caribbean. I went also to the Buddhist monasteries and learn about temple food, which is a vegan diet, but it's extremely interesting to learn from the nuns. Avec Eric was basically starting with me at Le Bernardin on season 1. Actually, I was the chef of Le Bernardin, and we were showing different aspects of the restaurant. Then I was traveling to the source of inspiration, which was either way in America or, like you mentioned, all over the world. And then I was coming back to my kitchen and cooking a recipe that was inspired by the experience. Season 3, I was purely traveling and experiencing the different areas of the countries I was visiting.
It's been an amazing journey, hasn't it? What an experience.
I was very, very lucky and very happy to be part of this experiment, because for me it was an experiment to do television. I'm trained to be a chef, not necessarily to be a host of a TV show, but we did pretty well because we won 2 Emmys. And so the Emmys are basically the Oscars of television in America. And, I think it's very encouraging and very rewarding for the team and of course for myself.
It is amazing how when a master chef becomes famous, they often do TV documentaries that take them all over the world, because food is one of the things that we all over the world, we all enjoy, and it's a uniting element, isn't it?
Of course, it's also connecting us with Earth, right? It's connecting us with the world. And when you travel, when you have those experiences, you learn from the different cultures, and you learn respect of the people and their culture and their country. You open your mind, obviously. You learn about respect of the planet and being a good visitor on this planet while you're here, and you learn about respecting the ingredients, and especially when they are live animals and so on. So it's a very positive and powerful experience.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it, that we, I must imagine that you've come across some cultures where they do use animals in some ways that maybe we in the Western world don't approve of. Should we should we condemn them for that or understand their culture more?
Well, we can always condemn people, but I have it's not me. I have the tendency to not condemn people and try to understand the cultures. You can look at the Western culture today, and when you think about factory farm and the way we are treating animals in those farms, it's definitely not ethical as well.
Mm. So we need to look at ourselves as well, not
Yes,
just condemn other countries.
Yes. And I'm not vegan, and I'm not preaching, and I'm not judgmental. But we have to think about the suffering of the animals,
yes.
and we have to think about the sustainability of our planets and what we are doing.
Well, we feed, all of us. I've got some wonderful pictures of the sort of amazing food that you do produce at Le Bernardin and elsewhere. I mean, that is baba au rhum.
Yes, this is a baba au rhum. So it's a play on the classical baba au rhum, and it definitely has rum, a lot of it, and it has on top a couple of ingredients that bring texture. And,
I mean, it just looks wonderful on your plate. Let's go to the next one, which is, now you'll have to tell me what that is.
So it's basically, it's chocolate covered with gold. It's a gold leaf on top, but it's hazelnut wafers in it. And so you have the texture of the hazelnut wafer with the chocolate, and then we're serving it with an ice cream made with malt.
That is a work of art. And you look at the next one, which is a scallop, I think.
This is a scallop, yes. This one, it's a scallop with a reduced dashi. So dashi is a broth from Japan that has a lot of umami flavors, and it is served in a scallop broth with cured lemons.
You see, it just looks so perfect. The next one is striped bass, which I can't quite see, but that looks amazing.
This one is a striped bass tartare with truffles and Perigord vinaigrettes.
I'm going to ask you in a minute how you just get things to look so perfect. The next one is just the most beautiful looking dish, and that's tuna and caviar.
Yes, this is a tuna carpaccio. So underneath you have a tuile to bring some crunch, and we cover the tuile with the tuna that has been pounded and that has the thickness of carpaccio, and we put some caviar on top.
I mean, you can see the plate through that, can't you? Now, on those photographs, I've noticed that we credit the photographer Nigel Parry. And that's
Yes.
what I wanted to ask you about is when you are making a cookbook and you're producing photographs that are that beautiful, how long does it take to photograph food and get everything looking absolutely perfect like that?
Well, you can get lucky, and it may be very, very quick. And in 5 minutes, you may get your shot. But usually, it takes about 45 minutes to an hour and a half to get the perfect shot. It's not that easy, and you have to play with the lights. You have to play with obviously the product itself, and see if it evolves while you are shooting. It has to look fresh. It has to look appetizing, and so on. And it's a long process.
So if your publishers say to you, okay, Eric, I want you to do another cookbook next year, how much of a headache is that? Oh, I've got to think up lots of new recipes. I've got to think of new things. I've got to look at other countries in the world. I've got to go through these very, very long-winded photographic sessions. Do you dread it, or do you love that sort of challenge?
What you just said to me, it's bliss.
Really?
Of course. I mean, as a chef,
it's what you do.
It's a privilege to be able to create and have the freedom to create. So it's not something that I take for granted. I'm very excited when I have the opportunity to create either way for the menu at Le Bernardin or for a book.
Okay, so your new book, I think, is about veggies.
Yes.
And I'm a vegetarian, so thank you so much. It looks really exciting. What has inspired you to focus more on vegetables at the moment?
Yes, I wanted to create Vegetable Simple because I have done 5 books on seafood. Actually, not 5 books on seafood. 3 on seafood and 2 that have meats and desserts and so on. And then, of course, my memoir that you mentioned a few minutes ago, which is called 32 Yolks. And I wanted to do something about vegetables because I realized that very often vegetables are an afterthought for people. And I find vegetables fascinating. And it's a way really to connect with the seasons because vegetables represent really the 4 seasons when you live in that part of the atmosphere where you have 4 seasons. And I wanted to inspire people to cook at home, and the vegetables pay homage to them, and to learn simple techniques that enhance the qualities of those vegetables. And at the same time, when you cook vegetables like we have in a book, it's basically a way to eat in a very, very convivial way at the table, because you have many different dishes on the table with different textures, different flavors because of different vegetables, and different colors as well, which is important, I think. And I wanted to do that book because in the summer I love to entertain out in my country house, and I have a lot of friends coming, and I put a lot of different plates on the table, and we enjoy many different vegetables that are in season at that time.
Do you think more, and I mean, at the moment, if you write a book about vegetarian cooking, you are still sort of, I don't know, you're almost campaigning a bit. Do you think that more and more of us will, in the end, adopt a more plant-based diet?
I am convinced that more and more of us will, and especially the generations to come, will eat more and more vegetables. Yes. I believe it's the future. But again, I am not preachy. I am not judging people. If you want to eat a big steak, go for it. And I'm happy if you're happy, and it's all good. Now, vegetables have a lot of benefits in terms of health, our health. The ones who eat the ingredients have a lot of benefits in terms of sustainability of our planet. And again, I mean, animals, when they feel the suffering, they feel when they are not happy, and so on. So it has all those benefits, of course.
Do you think you will ever write a book about insect-based food and cooking?
I don't think it's something I will do, but who knows? I may be inspired in few years from now. But again, insects are live animals. Insects feel the pain as well. So I don't think I will write something about insects.
I'm a fan of yours already. That fine. Interesting that you are a chef in a very, very famous restaurant in New York City, but you are very aware, and have been for some time, that just round the corner there are people who are too poor to come to your restaurant. There are people who can barely eat to live. And you have been working with City Harvest to try and at least touch on that, to address that problem. Tell me about City Harvest and how you got involved and how you feel about it and what you do.
Sure. City Harvest started 30 years ago, a bit more, 32 years ago. And basically, when City Harvest started, few volunteers would go in restaurants and pick up the leftovers and then distribute it to people in need in the neighborhood. That was the beginning of City Harvest.
Yeah.
Today, City Harvest is the biggest food rescue organization in the world, actually. And last year, City Harvest delivered 130 million pounds of food to people in need, which is not leftover from restaurants. It's fresh produce, fresh vegetables, shelf-stable ingredients as well. And CD Harvest is really something that makes a huge difference in New York City because in regular times, forget the COVID crisis, but even when the economy is good, when the city is successful, 1 out of 4 people live with food insecurity, and 1 out of 4 children do not know when they will have their next meal when the school is closed. So it's a real need to fight hunger, and City Harvest has been a champion at fighting hunger in New York.
We've got some pictures of you, what it looks like, cooking hundreds and hundreds of meals. So what is going on there?
So here I am with my friend Jose Andres, is a chef from Washington, D.C., who created World Central Kitchen. And World Central Kitchen basically helps communities that are facing huge crises like earthquakes, hurricanes, and so on. And during the COVID crisis, when New York was really challenged and we had a lot of people dying every day and so on, we had a lot of doctors and nurses coming to help and support the teams in New York. And they were staying in hotels next to us, and we were cooking food for them and delivering the food to the doctors and nurses on the beginning and people on the front line. And then we expanded to people that were hungry in shelters as well.
And that food doesn't look like emergency rations. That looks like really nice food.
We really put our heart into the process, and we really wanted them to eat great food. And it was something that the team was very excited and very proud of being part of creating those meals with always a nice protein, which was either way fish or chicken or poultry or something like that, and then vegetables and starch.
It looks wonderful. It really does. Congratulations. I know you're also passionate. You were talking earlier about some of the brutality, actually, that you experienced as a very junior member of a big kitchen, and that you believe that there are different ways to train chefs nowadays. You are involved in training the next generation of chefs, aren't you?
Yes, very much so. I am involved, well, first of all, at the restaurant with the team, because I'm basically the guy with the white hair, which means I'm the mentor. And I am also involved because I am working with culinary schools, and I have a voice that I use in the media to inspire people to teach how to work and how to be civilized and how to be respectful. And all of that makes me very happy.
Do you wear the hat? Do you actually wear the sort of hat?
I do not wear a hat. And one of the reasons is because the ventilation system is too low, and the hat will touch the top. So I don't wear a hat. But the entire team has to wear a hat. Yes.
Now we have
the tallest, by the way.
Well, that exactly. So there you are. You don't need the hat. You've got the white hair, as you said. That gives you the appropriate respect. We've got lots of questions. Here's one from Oliver. What is the one ingredient we should all have in our kitchen?
Salt.
Really?
Yes, because I think we don't think about it much, right? But salt basically is essential because it extracts the flavors, and it's the only way to have food that is savory. Without the salt, food can be very bland.
It's interesting you say that, because I was a young mum cooking for my boys in the 80s and 90s when there were huge campaigns against the use of salt. So I didn't used to put much salt in my food at all. And now they say that actually they got it wrong and there's nothing so bad about salt anymore. And I've got an alarm going off. I'll just but if you would answer, yeah, now they're saying there's nothing quite so bad about salt, and what's wrong with it, and use it. And so now I'm beginning to enjoy using salt in my cooking.
Yes, I mean salt. You have to use salt with moderation. It's obvious. You don't want to oversalt the food because first of all, it doesn't taste good. And as we know, it has potential some consequences on our health. But using salt in moderation, it's something that, again, makes the food tasty. And therefore is the main ingredient that I would, if I have to have only one ingredient in my
Salt.
kitchen, except the food itself that I'm preparing, it will be salt.
Do you cook at home?
Yes, I'm the private chef of the family.
Lucky them.
Lucky me too.
You don't get bored with cooking. You can always do something quick and easy, and it tastes wonderful.
Yes, it's a passion.
Yeah, it is.
When you are a chef or a cook, it's not necessarily a job, it's a lifestyle. And it's driven by passion.
Yes, that's interesting. It is a lifestyle, I can tell. Agnes asks, why is your memoir called 32 Yolks?
Because the 32 yolks are a pivotal moment in my culinary career. It's an important moment in my career. I am in La Tour d'Argent, and I don't want to say too much about it because I want you to read the book. Mm-hmm. But mastering the 32 yolks and making a hollandaise sauce with it, it's something that will change my life.
Yes. Okay. And hollandaise sauce, one of the most difficult things on the planet to master. Another one from Agnes says, I would like to know the most expensive ingredient you've ever put on a plate.
Well, the obvious ones are always caviar, white truffles, and black truffles.
And are they worth it?
And saffron too. Saffron is probably the most expensive ingredient in the world because saffron is actually even more expensive than gold or platinum when you think about the weight and so on. So in between the saffron, the truffles, and the caviar, I think we are good.
But is it worth it, really?
Of course it's worth it.
I will have to come and taste one day.
Please.
Another one. Now, I don't quite understand this, but you may. Do French chefs still need to train in France?
That's an interesting question. I don't think you need to be, first of all, I don't think you need to be French to be a good chef. I don't think you need to be trained necessarily in France to be a good cook. Today in the world, you find a lot of good food everywhere, and you learn techniques from a lot of different people from different cultures. So it's not necessarily a French exclusive about quality food or delicious food.
But it probably helps to be French still. Do you think?
I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
It's a perception.
It's something about the ambience. Okay, here's another one. I don't know how you're going to. Which is more important, the ingredient or the chef?
Of course, the ingredient. Because
but I could have saffron and not know what to do with it. I could have caviar and spoil it. Surely it's your talent that's more important at the end of the day.
I mean, look. Obviously, it's an interesting question, and it's not really one answer that is the right one. However, let's suppose you're a genius chef and you have mediocre ingredients in terms of quality and so on. Well, you start with mediocre ingredients, you end up with a mediocre dish.
Yes, yes, you can't improve on mediocre ingredients, I suppose, can you really?
Very rarely.
I understand. Another question. How do you balance your professional life with fatherhood, given what you've talked about in 32 Yolks? Because you have said, I dedicate a third of my life to the family, a third of my life to the business, and a third totally disconnected from both on myself. That's interesting.
Yes, this is my model. And when I say a third, it's not necessarily calculating the hours, but in my journey. So when I say time for myself, it's basically time to reflect, time to. I'm a big meditator. Every morning I spend quite some time meditating, and it's very positive for me. And I think when you have time for yourself, you can look at situations from a distance and basically be more efficient to tackle potential challenges that you may have in your life. Time for the family is very important because the family gives you unconditional love ultimately. And to me, to be a good husband and a good parent is very important. So I dedicate 1/3 of my life to taking care of the family. And again, they give it back to me. And obviously, time for work is essential, first of all, because it's practical, right, in our life, but also it's my passion. And I really want to dedicate quite some time to nurture the team and to be creative and to create experience for people. So that model really works. And I have to say, you have to find a balance in life. So if you work too much, suddenly your family suffer, and potentially yourself, suddenly you get burned. If you just spend time with your family, obviously your work suffers. And again, same thing. It's going to be potential failure. And if you think only about yourself, it's very selfish and egocentric, right? And it's not a good thing either.
I like that. It sounds like a very good pattern by which to live your life. Another here question from somebody who obviously knows his cooking. He says, I would like to know, trends come and go. We all remember sous vide, foams, alive food, etc. What do you think are the emerging trends right now for those of us who can't be constantly sampling Michelin star foods?
So it's few trends that will not disappear. And a lot of the trends, again, by definition, do not last. They're very popular for a little bit and then they disappear. So in America, we had the trend for eating kales, and at one point was cauliflowers and things like that. But those trends, again, don't last. I think what is important is the trend of sustainability. Wanted to eat products that are not necessarily genetically modified, do not use pesticides that are toxic for the earth and yourself and the water supply and so on. And if you eat animals, have animals that have been humanly raised, which means that they were happy until the last minute of their life, and that have no antibiotics, and again, that are healthy for yourself and the people that you feed. Those trends are very important.
Yes.
And we are more and more thinking about that because we are more educated, and also we have been abusing so much our resource that it's something that it must be addressed, and if we don't do that, as we know, it's going to be a lot of negative impact on the planet and on especially on humankind.
So another question here saying there have been some shifts amongst the best restaurants in the world in the last year, obviously, so that their dishes can be delivered to homes. Is this trend here to stay? Have you ever done anything like that? Have you tried a Michelin star takeaway?
Yes, so the COVID-19 forced a lot of restaurants to close all over the planet, and many restaurants to survive decided to do takeout, and some of them did it very successfully. However, at Le Bernardin, we didn't do takeout because we believe that fish is very sensitive to temperature and timing and so on. And previously, we were looking at pictures of a carpaccio of tuna with caviar. That dish cannot travel.
No.
It's impossible. And we have a lot of our food that is like that. It's the style of the restaurant. So therefore, we didn't do it. But it could be a trend that's going to last for quite some time. Now, I believe that restaurants that are fine dining will probably not do takeout for a long period of time, because you really need to be focused on the food that you're serving in your dining room, and that will prevent them to potentially be distracted by takeout.
And the sort of food that you love to cook and deliver to people and give to people depends on ambience, the restaurant's atmosphere, and also just the sheer fun of going out.
Yes, I believe that Le Bernardin experience is inside the walls of Le Bernardin. It's not in a package that goes to your house, or neither a terrace outside in a street in a winter when it's in New York minus 10 degrees. So therefore, we are excited to reopen very soon and to be able to recreate the Le Bernardin experience in our walls, inside.
And I understand that when you do reopen, I think you're going to give $5 for every meal you serve or something towards the charity that we talked about earlier, helping people who can't afford to come to your restaurant.
Yes, because we want to help the community in need that is surrounding us, and we feel lucky to reopen and to be able to cook for our clients. We are giving $5 to City Harvest, and $5 basically nourish 13 people for a day.
Yes, very important, really. And maybe that is, again, one thing that has come out of the last year, is that we have started to realize that we are part of a community. We don't just exist on our own. One final question is that is it true that you really, although you could open many more restaurants and many more all over different countries in the planet, you are more content with just one or two and keeping things calm, I suppose, on a manageable level?
So you said the key word, content. I found contentment, which is a big deal. I at one point, success, which is very subjective, obviously, in my industry was based on how many restaurants can you open and how many stars you can get and so on. And I tried to open a few restaurants here and there, and I realized that I was absolutely not happy with that development, and it had a huge impact on my lifestyle. And again, remember the balance of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3?
Yes.
That couldn't exist any longer, and I decided not to open restaurants all over the planet.
Good. But when we can travel again, then we will have to just make it our mission to come to you, and that will make it even more special.
And that would be very lovely. We would be very happy, of course, to see
you. Soon, absolutely. Yes. Eric, it has been an absolute privilege to talk to you. Thank you so much. I look forward. I can't recommend this book more to anyone watching at the moment, because this isn't just about a chef. It's like you said, you end it sort of almost on the brink of your success. This is about a human being who discovered a way through some hard times, and I'm so looking forward to reading it thoroughly right to the end. But until then, it's been an absolute privilege to meet you and talk to you today. Thank you so much.
It was my great pleasure. Thank you very much for having me with you, Anne, and everybody that's watching. And I wish you a beautiful journey.
Absolutely, a wonderful journey. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Woo! And let me just tell you that next week on Viking TV is Mediterranean Week. And my guest will be a very old friend of mine. He's a famous chef. He's a travel writer. He's a program maker. He's a huge entertainer. He's a very, very funny man. He's Ainsley Harriott, and he will be sharing with me his experiences in the Mediterranean for a book that he wrote called Ainsley's Mediterranean Cookbook. So we'll have a great time and a great laugh next week. Until then, do keep safe, do keep well, and I look forward to seeing you next Thursday here on Viking TV. Goodbye.